Господин Андреј Корип, како ви се допаѓа новиот изглед на градот кој се реализираше во рамките на проектот Скопје 2014, еден од главните проекти на владеачката ВМРО ДПМН?
I think the city is just beautiful. I mean, this key project is such a success. I mean, for me coming here as a tourist and someone that loves history, I mean, there's history everywhere. This is like a big outdoor museum. You know, Maria, I'm coming from Moscow. And in Moscow, we have the Moscow Metro, and that's typically, many people call it an underground museum. We have a lot of statues, mosaics, historic plaques, goes all around the city. And this is actually like an outdoor above ground museum. Everywhere I'm going, there's statues, there's plaques, names of historic people. I don't even know all of them yet. What I'm doing, I'm taking pictures of them. I'm going to look them up when I get back to Moscow. And I love it. I think it's great. I went to the Kale Fortress. That was amazing. Excellent views, a lot of history. Visited the old Turkish Bazaar. Went to the park on the riverfront. Walked across the beautiful bridges that you guys have. And I plan on visiting the museums later. But one thing that really stuck out, Maria, was the paint. I mean, you can't get away from it. And I'm thinking right now, you know, anyone can have an opinion, whatever they want to have about a government, but when you start attacking your history, when you start attacking public property, when you start breaking the law, when you're paintballing murals and, you know, statues dedicated to Macedonian refugees that left Aegean Macedonia, I mean, these are people that are trying to destroy their own history, and this should send alarm bells through every Macedonian's mind that something is terribly wrong. This is not a real opposition. In any democracy, no opposition acts like this. This is horrible. I see it, and I'm just thinking to myself, this is very sad. But you know, what I did notice though, Macedonians are very peaceful, calm people, and they're not being provoked into violence. This passive aggressiveness that's going on with the so-called opposition and Zoran Zaev, it is meant to incite violence. Attacking historical monuments, doing these types of things, disrespecting and desecrating things that are dear to all Macedonians, even me as a tourist that loves history, to see this happening. Of course, it hurts everybody, but it just shows you, if they're doing this, what are the motives, who's exactly behind them, and why are they so desperate to do that? And I keep thinking, Maria, to myself, you know, they're so desperate to do this because they can't win elections. They don't want to have elections. They keep wanting to postpone it. They earlier wanted early elections. They realized they couldn't win. VMRO had double to almost 3 times as much support. They wanted to postpone it. They went against their own agreement that they themselves had been pushing. So, I mean, what else? I mean, if these people don't want to stop, the people behind them don't want to stop, the next step is to intensify, is to attack historical monuments, is to do these types of things. And, you know, it bothers me to see that, but at the same time, I'm very hopeful, Murray. I've been here for a couple of days, and I'm very hopeful that everything will be all right, God willing. Meeting with you, other Macedonians, even just the guys selling souvenirs at the stall, waiters working in cafes, everyone is so peaceful and calm. And I'm thinking to myself, honestly, I think you guys are the most peaceful and calm people in all the Balkans, actually. You guys just want to be left alone, you do your own thing, you don't want any neighbors bothering you, don't want any external plots coming in. Macedonians just want to be Macedonians in the Republic of Macedonia. And this so-called opposition wants to stop that.
Веста за изгласаниот Брекзит изврши притисок на петоколонашите застапувани од опозицијата, Сорос и невладиниот сектор. Како Брекзит ќе влијае на ситуацијата во Македонија, ако се претпостави дека имаме западни елементи кои се обидуваат да ја срушат владата на ВМРО ДПМН?
I think that we're going to have two effects. One effect is on Macedonians themselves. The other effect is going to be on the foreign plotters that are trying to instigate this regime change operation. As it relates to regular Macedonians, I think that even to those that had naively believed in the virtues of the EU, so to speak, and NATO, that's dead. Who wants to join a sinking ship? You leave the sinking ship. You don't join it and go down with it. And right now, there is no reason at all, if there ever was any reason, for the Republic of Macedonia to even want to join the EU. As we know, first it would have to be a name concession. The only way for that to happen is for this so-called opposition, which is foreign supporter, to come to power. But I think now regular Macedonians see, look, the UK, for better or for worse historically, they've had their own policies, but look, they're kind of intelligent. They know when something's working, they know when something's failing, and they see the EU falling down. Immigration, but most importantly, it's actually a dictatorship. I don't usually liberally use the word dictatorship, but if we see what's happening, I mean, basically the member states have given up all sovereignty to Brussels technocrats, and it's getting worse. Maria, this morning I was reading, in my apartment, this new plan that Germany and France have to supposedly reform the EU. Well, the idea is to have an EU army, basically getting rid of all countries' militaries. Now, in a region such as the Balkans, and as we know with the Macedonian situation, it would be the worst thing ever for this country to give up its military right now, in the middle of the immigration crisis, and with with some neighbors that are kind of unfriendly. That things can develop one way or another sometimes in the future. You just need to be safe. So I'm looking at what's happening, and I'm thinking, average Macedonians, I think they're done with this. They see what the EU is, and right now the only reason to join is to give all of your resources and growth to Brussels, or should I say, to Berlin. Now, how it relates to the foreign plotters. As we know, the United States, and especially the UK ambassador, they've been very, very actively involved with this. But right now, the UK is facing its own internal dissolution process. Scotland and Northern Ireland are talking about potentially leaving the UK. At the same time, the EU itself is falling a bit apart. Reason would suggest that the UK has a lot more important things on its plate right now internally than worrying about Macedonia's internal situation. So reason would suggest that they would slow down their destabilization, but at the same time, though, states, countries, especially big bureaucracies like the one that the UK has, they don't always act reasonably. In fact, it could very well be the case that the British ambassador and the people that are behind him as well in the UK government, that they're not directly affected by Brexit. In this case, they might continue doing more of the same. It does not mean that they will succeed. It's just that I'm a little bit cautious about saying that the UK will stop what it's doing just because the UK itself is falling apart and the EU is falling apart. Compartmentalized bureaucracies typically don't stop until way after their mission has been completed or has been proven to be a failure. It's been proven to be a failure for over a year. And one other thing I want to say real quick, Maria, too. When we look at what's happened this past year, ever since I first started writing about the Republic of Macedonia, we see that there's been pressure to show all the voting rolls, to have all this transparency. And you know what? There's one conclusion any objective observer can say, that VMRO is the cleanest governing party in all of Europe. No other party in Europe, not Angela Merkel's, definitely not Francois Hollande's, no one in the UK, Poland, no one, would have their government show all of the information and not have a single problem with it. The government is clean. And I think that, I think ironically, they thought that they were going to pressure the government, the UK and US and all these backers thought they'd pressure VMRO. They'd expose some secrets, some skeletons in the closet, drop some more of these bombs. But it turns out, VMRO's clean. They're not rigging the vote. They're not rigging anything. Actually, it turns out that the way I see this crisis, it makes VMRO look even better. Very peaceful party. It's not a dictatorship attacking its own people, nothing like that. Everyone's calm. There's nothing to hide. They're showing them all the books. What I say, hey, why don't we have the UK government open up their books, open up your voting rolls? I mean, if we look at Brexit, for example, with the latest vote, the day of the vote, the Brexit supporters were saying, bring your own pen to the ballot because they have pencils and the Remain campaign could erase. Can you imagine if the Republic of Macedonia has something like that, something that primitive? I mean, they would make it an international news sensation. But it just goes to show you, I say open up all the polls with the UK, show the voting rolls, show everything that goes on. They wanted to steal that election, but they didn't. And I think it's good. I think it's good for democracy now. We see Europe is trying to free itself. The people, they don't want to stand for this politically incorrect nonsense. They don't want that happening. Migrant crisis, over 1 million new arrivals. Who's going to pay for it? The UK says we're not paying for Germany, refugees going or immigrants going into Germany. And Macedonia shouldn't have to pay either.
Може ли да се направи една паралела помеѓу пропагандата која се спроведува против македонското и онаа против руското лидерство?
Yes, we can definitely draw parallels because this is a systematized and patternized approach. What's happening against the Russian president and the Macedonian leadership, these tactics and strategies are coming from the same rulebook. They're coming from Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. Now, Maria, I've been here for a couple of days. I was asking my other Macedonian friends, I was telling them about Rules for Radicals. You know what they told me? They said that U.S. aid, the U.S. had basically paid to translate Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, which is a hardcore left-wing type of revolutionary regime change document from the 1970s, into Macedonia a couple years ago. It's no coincidence that that's when these demonstrators were being organized, they were being trained, they were being indoctrinated with these works. There's also Gene Sharp. He came out with the book, From Dictatorship to Democracy, basically on-the-ground street tactics for provoking regime change. There are realistic alternatives. That was another book. 189 Methods of Nonviolent Resistance, other books. And we see that, okay, on the ground, very similar patterns. In terms of information, very similar. I brought up Rules for Radicals because one of the rules that Mr. Alinsky mentions is to freeze the target. By freezing the target, he means look at the target, frame it, And then in this decontextualized standpoint, then you start attacking it. And you attack it with all different interest groups. And that's what's happening now. The government of Macedonia, government of the Russian Federation, they're being attacked by different interest groups, different NGOs, and also by different international groups. Some groups are saying, oh, Republic of Macedonia is bad for immigrants. No, it's not. It's supporting state sovereignty. Every country has borders. Every country has to protect its people. Just because the U.S. lets millions of Mexicans go across the border doesn't mean Macedonia can do that. And the U.S. is doing that for another reason anyhow, cheap labor, trying to get closer with Mexico in another way. And then I look at this information war against President Putin. Very, very similar. We can even say that now when the U.S. is trying to attack all of these resistant, independent leaders throughout the world, be it in Europe, Asia, even in Africa, they're using the same tactics that they applied against President Putin. It's the same thing. It's the same pattern. Now, why? Are these leaders just like President Putin? In a sense, yes. In the sense that they love their country, they are patriotic, not nationalist, but patriotic. They support their people, they support their societies or civilizations. Like you guys have a multi-millennial civilization that, of course, needs to be protected. And they are resisting the Western-led so-called New World Order, which has been created with different economic blocks and financial blocks, overlapping with geostrategic ones, such as the European Union project, different projects in Asia, and, of course, NATO. So when I see Prime Minister Grabsky, I see how strong he was resisting this attack. And I also look at President Ivanov, and he just said a couple weeks ago, he said, I was in a very tough position, and I had to do what I had to do with those amnesty pardons to avoid a civil conflict. And I say, you know what? Very, very smart. Very, very smart leaders. These are leaders that care about the country. They're not just going to sell the country out, but they're not going to just deploy the military in the street just for the heck of it, because they don't want to disrupt society. They don't want to disrupt life. They want people to go along in their lives as if nothing happened, because these demonstrators, see, I don't call them protesters anymore, Maria. See, a protester protests for something. At the beginning, they were pretending to protest for early elections. So what are you doing? You're not protesting, you're demonstrating. You're demonstrating because you're trying to incite a conflict and you're trying to provoke a regime change. You don't want elections in any democracy, right? Any democracy, you have to have elections. And right now they don't want elections because they're going to lose. It's not a democracy. These are people that have a dictatorial slant. And it's no coincidence that these people that don't want elections are also being supported by the EU, which doesn't want elections either. So that's just all I'll say to that, is that, these resistant and defiant leaders that are standing up to the Western-led world order, these are the ones that are being attacked. They're being attacked using the same rulebooks, the same pattern that's being applied against President Putin. But just like President Putin succeeded, and is still succeeding and will continue, God willing, so too will the Republic of Macedonia. Maria, after being here, I have to say I feel very confident that everything will be all right. I think things will be good. The only question is, does the U.S. want to escalate it into high-level violence? I hope not. But I think right now everything is going to be okay.